From the Toronto Star, I'm Reggie Mudler, and this matters. Pop quiz hotshot. What do you remember from your high school graduation day? As one of the strangest school years ever comes to a close, Ontario's graduating high school class is coming up on this rite of passage. And with lingering pandemic restrictions, they are likely looking to have some form of Zoom-based streaming video ceremony. After a year of mostly virtual school, for one student, that kind of graduation is simply not good enough. Anoosha Keshav is a grade 12 student who has started a petition calling for an outdoor-based graduation for her and her peers. She joins us to discuss why she thinks it's feasible and why her class deserves it. We will then be joined by Moran, the CEO of Children's Mental Health Ontario, who will also share her thoughts. Anoosha, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us today.
Thank you for having me.
How would you characterize sort of school in the pandemic? It doesn't sound like it's been very fun.
It's not ideal. I won't lie. There are some perks like getting to sleep in a little bit. You don't have to get ready. You can just attend class, but it's definitely not been easy. It's been straining for mental health for a lot of people. And it's been harder, like I said, and I've just been missing out on the school experience a lot lately.
So we're nearing the end of the year. Graduation is coming up. You started a petition. Can you tell us what it's about and what you're asking for?
So I started the petition to the provincial government and school boards to allow the class of 2021 to have outdoor COVID-safe graduations. So the reason I started this is because this is something myself and all my friends and pretty much anyone I've talked to that's graduating this year wants. And I think this concept of an outdoor COVID-safe graduation is totally possible because now that we're almost at June, vaccine rollout is starting, the situation is slowly getting better. So we think that this is something possible and it is safe. So, there's been a lot of scientific reports, even people on the Ontario COVID advisory panel are saying that outdoor transmission, the risk is very low. So, with personal protective equipment such as masks, maybe even face shields, with physical distancing, and there's many different ways that we can approach this to maintain limited contact and limit attendees. I think that the idea of an outdoor grad is possible, and this is something that we all want.
Anoosha, how did this start? Is it just you? Is it a bunch of people, some of your friends? Is there a committee? Who's sort of behind this thing?
Me and my best friend, Victoria. So we've been talking about this a lot. It comes up in almost every conversation because, we're almost there at the end and we don't want to watch a pre-recorded video for a graduation. That's just really sad to me. So I've been thinking about this a lot. And those who know me know that I always have ideas and I always try to do something. So I decided to take this matter into my own hands because I don't want to just keep complaining about this problem. I actually want to do something about it. So me and Victoria are discussing. And then I decided to start this. And I have an organization called 21, which focuses on providing resources and support to the class of 2021. So I use that organization to promote this petition, which helped a lot.
You mentioned some of the medical experts have been saying outdoor transmission is low, but one of the things that I liked in the petition is that you had a number of ideas about what an outdoor graduation could look like. So let's discuss some of those. One of the first things you said was basically no visitors, right? Well, one of the things is no visitors. It's just the graduating class, right?
Yeah, that's one of the ideas. If they want to look into limiting attendees, just the graduates and certain staff members.
Do you think you'd be doing the walk-up? What are the safe ways and what accommodations do you think could be made or suggest to have an outdoor graduation?
So I do think that would vary based on school because there's a lot of factors to look into, such as graduating size. But the thing I put in the petition is more related to my school. So for my graduating class, it's relatively smaller than I would say other schools. Something that I was thinking if they want to do limited contact. So instead of calling students up, maybe there'd be a designated spot where students would be at, obviously physical distancing. And, they would sort of get up on their own spot and flip their own tassel instead of being called up.
One of the other things too is you said you don't really want a video graduation, but for a family to be involved, one of the things you also suggested is having the ceremony live streamed, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the reaction been so far to this?
So most of it has been really positive, which I really appreciate, and I'm really happy about that. And there has been some negative reaction to it too. Some people think that it's not going to work, which is fair because, the idea does seem a little far-stretched to some people. But then there's some people so the principal of my school thinks that it's not possible. There's also some people from the class of 2020. So I've been getting mixed reactions from those people. So some of them are happy to support the petition because they never got a graduation last year. But then there's some that are really angry about this. So there's there's this one person I interacted with, and he seemed very angry. He said that he wasn't going to sign the petition at all because he never got a grad, so neither should we. And I'm not forcing anyone to sign the petition, but it was just funny to me how angry he was that we shouldn't get one if they didn't get one.
Who's signing this petition? It's not just people in your graduating class, right?
No, so I thought at first it would be majority of the members of class of 2021, but it's students all over Ontario and parents and even teachers.
And you said some people from the class 2020 as well, right?
Yeah, and we even have some grade eights. So they're probably going to miss out on a middle school graduation. In the petition, I was looking at one of the comments, and this one grade eight said that she can't imagine missing out on high school graduation. So, we even have younger people signing.
Where are you sending this petition to? Do you think about sending it to your school administration or just your school board? Who are you sending this to and why?
To the provincial government and the school boards. So the school boards would sort of be the main people because they're the ones that have direct correlation with these schools and can give them permission. But it is the provincial government, and yet at the end of the day, that can dictate if school boards can do that. So that's what I plan to send it to.
What about your school administration? You mentioned that you had a reaction at your school from your principal. What happened?
So we had a graduation assembly where they were discussing, grad gown pickup details and how the ceremony will look like. And my principal is aware of the petition because she read it on the news and she heard it from other teachers and students. So the principal told us about how the idea is not possible. So there is that reaction from my school administration. And I'm sure it's the same in other schools and school boards. People at that level think that it's not possible, but I still think there's a chance. So I was talking to the principal again today, and she said the reason they think it's not possible is because it's too late to hire certain stuff like sound systems. But a couple days ago, a business actually reached out to me who does drive-in theaters and outdoor graduations, and they sent me a whole portfolio of how they did outdoor graduations. So I do think if I am getting support from businesses like that, this is definitely possible.
When do you plan on sending this in? Because you are sort of coming up on a deadline, and there's some reality to the administration saying perhaps they are running out of time to rent things and that sort of thing. But when do you want to send this in?
So I keep procrastinating. I was supposed to send it on Monday, but since then I learned some new information. So every time I learn something, I'm trying to counter attack it by giving more support.
Because, you expect graduation to be in about a month, so they could make some plans by that time, correct?
Yeah.
In terms of vaccinations, where are you and your peer group at right now?
So I already got vaccinated a couple of weeks ago, and in my friend group, so some of them are already vaccinated, whereas others have their appointment booked. So everyone 18 plus is eligible. And even though there's some people in my grade who are under 18 like myself, but anyone born 2003 is eligible. There's some people in our grade who are maybe in 2004, but even then they're eligible now because I believe it's 12 plus. So there shouldn't be a problem with the vaccine at all.
Why are you asking for graduation as opposed to, say, prom?
So prom is also a very important milestone in our lives, but graduation is sort of the thing that signifies it all. Our graduation ceremony represents, and it's to celebrate all our hard work and successes from these past 4 years. And not only that, but all the years we've been in the education system. And this is sort of our way of saying goodbye to all our peers and classmates and teachers before we go through different paths in our lives.
If you had the chance, what would you say to Education Minister Stephen Lecce about this?
I would say that this year has been really difficult on all of us. And as grade 12s, we've had to spend the entirety of our senior year in a pandemic. We've had to miss out on certain stuff. And, even the university application process this year got more competitive. Everything's just gotten a lot harder. And we just want to end our year in one final good note. And if this is possible, then this is something that we really want because we've been working hard for it.
Have you heard from anybody in the government yet?
I didn't even know this because no one reached out to me about this, but over the weekend, a bunch of articles came out. So a representative for Minister Lecce said that, I forgot what it was exactly, but something about how he's starting to consider outdoor graduations now that restrictions are sort of lifting.
Actually, has there been any other really interesting reactions or surprising reactions?
I don't know if this is really interesting or surprising, but out of all the school boards that put out a statement, the one to do it was Deaf and Peel, which is the school board that I am part of. So I forgot who it was. I think it's the person in charge of Deaf and Peel, a representative for them, is the one that said it might be too late.
One of the factors of an outdoor graduation is a chance for some inclement weather, among other issues. But Anoosha, why do you feel this is feasible now, and why should this happen?
Well, first of all, in the US, from what I know, what I've seen in TV shows and from people that I know that live in the US, their graduations are outdoor. It's usually on their school fields. But here, I'm not sure about all schools, but I know a majority of schools in Ontario, our graduations are done in banquet halls or some sort of hall like that. So with an outdoor graduation, this would be outside on our school fields. So the cost is reduced for it makes it a lot cheaper. And there's a lot of space on these school fields. My school is pretty small, but even on our field, there's enough space to accommodate every graduate and teacher too. So I think it's feasible because it is entirely safe. Like I mentioned earlier, the risk of transmission outdoors is very low. And with everyone physical distancing and wearing PPE, sorry, I don't think there's a problem because the whole reason they don't want to give us a graduation ceremony is because they want to prevent the spread of COVID and transmission. So I think this is feasible because it's cost effective. And, there's certain factors which people are saying make it too late, like the thing I mentioned earlier, the sound system, which I understand. But if there's enough support coming and they're able to find people, I think this is entirely doable.
Anoosha, I feel really bad about all the missed milestone events for all kinds of students, like graduation or Frosh Week for university students. It has been an incredibly tough year, and I'll admit, I'm on your side of this. Is there anything I didn't ask that you think our listeners should know?
One thing I would like to mention, so a lot of people have been asking me, so class of 2020, they didn't get a graduation, so why should we? I think our situations, they differ a lot, even though we're sort of in the similar boat. So for them, they had their grade 12 year and then halfway through went into a pandemic. But for us, we've been in a pandemic majority of the year. So when it was June 2020, that was just a few months into the pandemic and everyone was still in that stage where we were getting used to it. We still didn't know what to do. Organizers didn't know how to do anything. So everything was virtual and that was the reality. But now over a year later, things are getting better. We have the vaccine, we have restrictions, we know what to do. People know how to adjust to the situation. So I do think that our situations vary a lot. That's why they couldn't get a graduation, but we can.
Well, Anoosha, I hope you get to have an outdoor graduation. And I really, really want to thank you for your time and discussing it with us today.
No worries. And thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
That was Anoosha Keshav, a grade 12 student who started a petition for an outdoor-based graduation ceremony for the class of 2021. We'll be right back. We are now joined by Kim Moran, the CEO of Children's Mental Health Ontario. Kim, thanks so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to highlight some of these issues.
Kim, let's just start very basically. What do you think about the idea of holding on outdoor graduations for high school students of the class of 2021 in Ontario?
I think the more that we can do to get kids back into some place of normal, to get back kids being just kids, I think we have to do that. I think every adult has to lean into that to make things more normal for kids.
The first half of this episode, we spoke to Anoosha Keshav. She's a 17-year-old who started the petition for this. I believe she's just over 15,000 signatures now, so she's doing really well. I'm sure you heard a little bit about this. What did you think about this?
I can quite understand why they want to do this, because really the social isolation for kids has been very harmful for them. I mean, we've seen research coming out of various different places, Sick Kids, CHEO, that have really talked about the impact of the pandemic on child and youth mental health. And all of it speaks to is the social isolation being the driving force, the missing of big events, like we're talking about graduations. That is what kids are missing right now. And that is really impacting their mental health negatively. The data is all kind of coalescing around that piece, is that kids need to see other kids. They need these big events back in their lives. And that's why I think, given our review of all the evidence, is that we really need to support kids to do this.
Now, it is funny you say that, because we're a month out and she's being told it's not feasible. She's being told it's a little too late to maybe rent the sound systems. What do you think about that as a response?
Well, I'm not the one who has to actually put it on the ground. So I will say that adults have to do as much as possible to get things as normal as possible for kids. And we have seen incredible workarounds happen because of pandemics. We have seen people do some incredibly innovative things very quickly to get around obstacles. So what is it that we can do to make it as normal as possible for kids in this abnormal environment?
Now, is this something that you are lobbying for, or are there any thoughts on the government or where they are on this? Have you heard any movement from their side?
So we've been advocating to government for months now to say schools should be the last to close, first to open. And so when all schools closed a number of months ago, or a month ago, how much is it? It seems like it's forever now. We came out very shortly thereafter to say, okay, how are we going to get these schools all reopened? Let's reopen them. And we work in coalition with the 5 pediatric hospitals because we were all really sensing that there wasn't enough policy leadership in government around getting schools open and the impact of them being closed on children. So we've been advocating pretty loudly for months now about the need for schools to be open, the need for these types of events to happen. I would say I was disappointed that when we saw I think it's called a roadmap now, the new roadmap was that released last week, that schools were not even mentioned at all. I was really disappointed to see that because we'd been really clear, I think, with the government that it had to be, that we had to have the government lead on this issue. And so I was very disappointed to see that. I am very concerned that now it's May 25th today, and there's no real talk about schools. We do work with many of the public health units, and I know that many of them all feel that things are safe enough for schools to open. And so I am really concerned about that.
In talking to Anoosha, one of the things that she's pointed out is that the province is slowly reopening. A lot of younger people in her peer group already have their first dose of vaccination or are shortly getting their next one. It sounds that there are a lot of factors here that as society reopens, you could potentially hold something like an outdoor graduation outside. It feels like it could potentially be done safer. What do you have to say about that? And I think let's start with the most basic one, the fact that, most 17 to 18-year-olds can be vaccinated right now. And I think that probably should be the thing that sort of pushes this forward. Do you agree?
Well, I think that the vaccination rates are going to be variable between all the different public health units for lots of different reasons and logistics and distribution and that. But let me reframe that for you and say, I think that the government's thinking about opening patios fairly soon, restaurant patios. So how could we open restaurant patios before we allow graduation ceremonies? That's not right. We should be able to have kids back to having normal activities before we do many of these other things that's planned in the government's roadmap. So I would say if we're even considering patio dining, graduations should be first.
You kind of mentioned this already. It's a big question. What do you think the toll is of all of the missed milestones for children and school kids in the past 15 months?
It's enormous. I think it's had a huge impact on their mental health. I think that, most kids are going to bounce back from this really resiliently. And I know you're a parent, and I'm sure you're hearing me and thinking, oh no, but most kids are quite resilient and they're going to bounce back really well. But we do know from the research that kids who had pre-existing mental health issues are not doing very well. We know that kids who have, say, ASD as well as mental health issues are not doing very well. And those are the kids I'm most worried about. And I'm most worried that our service system to support those kids was in a crisis before the pandemic, and nothing has been done to make it any different going forward after the pandemic. So I'm worried about those kids. I think that it is still where we're going to have to see what the impact is. We don't know. This is sort of all new for all of us, right? And so we're tracking the data very closely. We're tracking all the different researchers' work to see what this sounds like. We do know that there are some anomalous data points that we're trying to figure out. So we know that eating disorders are on the rise in hospitals. Our pediatric hospitals have shown data that's quite compelling that eating disorders are increasing. We don't know why yet. We don't know what about the pandemic is causing that. We know that hospital utilization, so emergency rooms and inpatient units at hospitals, at first, just like every other healthcare system, when the pandemic hit, the rates of utilization dropped like a stone, but are now back at pre-pandemic rates. And we're kind of trying to understand, okay, are we still climbing? Because that's a real problem if we're still climbing. Many people think, well, isn't it great that people go to get help through hospitals? Well, actually, it means usually that you're in crisis if you've gone to hospital with a mental health issue. We want to get to kids when they're not in crisis, when they're showing signs of a mental health issue or they're struggling or their families are struggling, not wait till somebody's in crisis. That doesn't make any sense at all. I'll tell you the reason I do this work is because our daughter had very serious mental health issues. And it started from a kid that was sad at 11 and then went to a kid that was depressed and waiting for help to a suicidal kid and in a hospital. And that progression only took 2.5 months. So I really believe that we don't want kids to get into crisis. I can tell you it took maybe 3 years of a short life to get her back into, I would say, normal and feeling great about herself the way, a child should. I want to make sure that we get kids when they're in the sad to depressed range before they go into crisis and are suicidal, because that means it's harder to get them back to being a normal kid. It takes longer to get them back. So we need to make sure that we're addressing these issues quickly as they come up. And we have to make sure that we have a service system that is ready for that.
Well, I think this has been the most abnormal year for just about anybody. So, from my opinion, I think having a semblance of a normal graduation is something that we probably all should be trying for these kids. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. And I can imagine on the ground it's super hard to implement for administrators and for teachers, but I think we should ask the question of how can we? Not it's too hard.
On that note, Kim, I'd like to really thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. Great talking to you.
Kim Moran is the CEO of Children's Mental Health Ontario. That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us. This Matters is hosted and produced by me, Raju Mudler, Adrian Chung, and Saba Etizaz. Produced and mixed by Sean Pattenden, and our director of programming is JP Foso. Our show theme music is by So Called, and our episode music is by Mike DeAngelis. We want to hear what stories matter to you. Please send us comments, questions, or ideas to thismatters@thestar.ca. Please consider supporting the journalism the Toronto Star newsroom does at thestar.com. And don't forget to subscribe to This Matters on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Let's talk soon.